Hey everybody, I'm Darrien, and I'm joined here again with my buddy Austin.
How's it going, guys?
And we're going to talk a little bit more about culture. This is a continuation of our video last time, and Austin's going to just continue, and we're going to talk about what we're talking about today here in the youth group.
So we've been talking about culture for the past 3 weeks. First week, we kind of talked about the fact that, as Christians, we're opposed by the culture because the culture is really stepping away from God. Actually, this past week, in New York State at least, there were a lot of significant changes and bills that were signed. So it's a very relevant thing for us to be talking about. Week 2, we kind of looked at, what are our options? As Christians living in the culture, not able to really escape the culture, what are our options? We said we can either embrace the culture, we can either be countercultural, or we can be isolated and kind of ignore it and go about our business. And so we looked at some scripture that really responded to those options that we have. So we covered that last week. And this week, we're going to do a recap of week 2, but we're also going to dive a little more into who we are within the culture. And before we can look at what our role is inside the culture, we have to first look at ourselves internally. And once we establish who we need to be internally, then we can see how we're supposed to interact with the culture so that we're coming from the right perspective in doing so. So if you guys want to read Ephesians chapter 4, 17 through 32, and then Ephesians 5, 1 through 20, those will give you guys a great idea of what we're talking about today. And it seems like a list of do's and don'ts, but we need to have the correct perspective about it. We're going to talk again about being transformed by the renewing of your mind, and how these things, although they can seem impossible for us, if we have a transformation in our mind, they become natural to us instead of something we look at and say, there's no way. I've tried it before. I've tried it out of my own strength, and I failed over and over and over again. We're going to make it a point to have a transformation, to seek God more wholly, so that we can then look at the culture around us and consider how we're called by God to interact with the people around us so that we can have a change within our culture.
I have a question. So,
Absolutely.
Would you say that it's a good idea to just go out, or do you think that we need that transformation first, is what you're saying?
That's a great question. God gives us spheres of influence. So God calls us to represent Him, whoever we're with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously,
wherever we are, too.
Exactly. If we're in school, or we're at work, or we're in college, or anywhere within our own friend groups, we have a sphere of influence. God calls us to interact with those people. Now, we should know our limitations. Certainly, if you're a new believer, you might not want to go toe-to-toe in a debate.
Yeah.
So really, as you grow, you become equipped to do things like that. As you grow, you should start to feel more of a personal calling on your life given to you by God.
Absolutely.
He absolutely has things for us to do here and now, but first and foremost, we need to seek Him, and we need to make sure that our relationship with Him is strong, and then He will give us the calling and tell us what we need to do, who He wants us to interact with, what He wants us to say to people, and who He really wants us to be.
Absolutely.
So I would say that we do both things, and they grow and they develop. We find out what we're good at. We find out what we're interested in over time.
Yeah, so how do we get ready in those times? Like, as we're waiting and as we're getting prepared, what's something good to do to prepare to when those things come up?
I would suggest that as we walk with God, He reveals things to us in His timing, and then calls us to act in the situations.
So, like, makes us ready.
Exactly.
When those things come up.
He's
Yeah, that's a great
in the
point.
process right now of making us ready for things that we're not even aware of. Situations that we haven't even faced yet, God is currently working in us to make us prepared for those situations.
That's super encouraging to me to
Yeah,
think
it's
about
absolutely
that God
true.
is preparing me right now for, like, say, my future wife, or this conversation that I'm going to have that right now I might not be ready for, but through, hard times or through conversations with you or other people in my church, that I can be learning those things, and then when those things come up, that I can be ready for that.
What do we say to people who don't feel that they're being called to specific action and they're just going about their business? Well, what I would say is, God created you, and He died for you because He has a plan for your life. So if you're in a position now, and many of us are, where we're not feeling God calling us to specific actions, I would suggest that's because we are not walking in the Spirit as closely as we should be.
Maybe not even asking too, because He says ask and it will be given to you. So
Right.
if you're looking to do something and you're not sure what your next move is, I would suggest maybe ask God to see what that is. And if you've been asking God, then maybe take a step of faith and say, like, God, I'm just going to trust you on this. I wouldn't say go to a suicide mission and something like that and go to the deep end. But I would say, step out of your comfort zone, because God doesn't call us to be just in this little circle. He calls us to come out of that, like into the glaze.
Yeah. And one thing I want to make sure we add, so we're talking a lot about being transformed by the renewing of your mind, which is usually the snippet that people quote from that verse, but that's not the whole verse.
Yeah.
The verse goes on to say, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and then you will know the will of the Father. Mm-hmm. And that's a really significant piece that often gets left out.
That's a huge puzzle piece, too.
Exactly.
To know the will of God. That's great.
So if you're not in a position right now where you feel that you know God's will for you, that's something you need to do, is continue to renew your mind. Mm-hmm. Then you will know God's will for you.
Absolutely. He'll give you the right perspective that you need.
Absolutely.
Even if it's not the time. I think that's all the time we have today, speaking of. So thank you, Austin, for being here. We're going to continue the discussion from the weeks to come. So make sure you keep watching these videos on YouThe Church. Thanks again, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Awesome. We'll talk to you guys soon. We love you, and take care.
Take care.
Bye.